Well, hello, citizens of the world. Shaba Shams in another episode of Around Our Table Podshow. I'm super excited to have you come back to another episode of my show that is very focused on entrepreneurship and more even focused on food entrepreneurs. Our aim is to inspire, empower, and connect the citizens of the world to create success and achieve financial freedom. And what better way to achieve financial freedom but to invite our amazing entrepreneurs who can share with us the how to get financially independent. And I have a very special guest today on my show, and her name is Mrs. Patel. Welcome to my show. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you so much. It's great to meet you, Shaba, and thank you to your audience for listening in. I appreciate the time.
Absolutely. So, as we were talking briefly before we got started, that I am focused now more on foodpreneurs. I started this show about a couple of years ago, and it was more about entrepreneurship as a whole. And this year, 2022, because I am more building things, I'm more getting into cottage food operations and the food industry, that I thought that to add this little niche into my repertoire, if you wish, about foodpreneurs and cottage food operations. And I met you through one of the Facebook groups, and you have a whole story behind what you do as a cottage food operators that I'm really interested in getting to in a minute. But before that, I want to know about you, who you are, and where are your origins, and tell me a little bit about yourself and your journey in life.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, my name's Jalpa, and I currently live in Parkland, Florida. We are recent transplants from Connecticut, actually. So we're enjoying going through all the seasons in South Florida in a very different way than up in the Northeast. So it's been quite the change.
Less cold.
Yeah. And today happens to be cold, actually. And my husband and I were, laughing about it, thinking, wow, it's actually cold. And how did we go from New Englanders to feeling cold all of a sudden in South Florida? So
How long have you been here?
It has been a year. It has been
Oh,
a year
wow.
now.
You're a
Yeah.
newbie then.
Yeah.
It will take you about a couple of years, just to switch the feel of it. And now I've been here for years. So, and I used to live in the Midwest, so it's like, from probably September until May, it's kind of cold for me because I'm originally from North Africa. And it took me a couple of years to get used to the heat. But then now, and then the cold wasn't really cold, but now really, like you say, you're like 40 degrees and 50 degrees, like, oh my gosh, it's really cold. And then
Yeah.
I laugh because 40, 50 degrees up north, it's a breeze. It's like a September
Yeah.
weather,
It's a
right?
nice day.
Yeah. So how are you getting used to the, just life in Florida, and then also the summer times, I would say, the heat?
Well, I mean, so speaking of the summertime, my hair is consistently up all of a sudden. I'm used to keeping it down, and I haven't gone through a single day without keeping my hair up. The humidity I thought was going to do wonders in a hopeful way, but it hasn't been kind to my hair, and it's curly frizzy, and so it's just better up
Yeah.
now.
Well, it will take a couple of years for your hair to start getting used to the humidity.
Yeah. And I've gone through, I don't know, 7 different bottles of mousse and hair
Wow.
products. And I've never done that in my life. I've never put stuff in my hair, and all of a sudden I'm buying hair stuff.
Yeah.
Just trying to tame it, I guess. So before coming here, we were in Connecticut for a long time. I was there for 10 plus years, and my husband has been there for 30 plus years.
Oh,
So
wow.
you could say we're New Englanders at heart, but definitely enjoying Florida life. And the kids, I have 2 daughters, one 8-year-old and one 3-year-old. Um, the 3-year-old I think doesn't remember much about Connecticut, but my 8-year-old does
Yeah.
remember New England life, and she wishes probably to go back if I ask her, if we're moving back or not. She'd say yes right away. But we're
Is
enjoying
that
it.
your intention to move back?
No, I don't think so at all. We are we're world travelers, I think, at heart, in the sense of we moved here to the U.S. When we were young. So my
Mm.
husband was, I think he was 2 years old when he moved here. So, and his parents are actually from Fiji, and they're
Oh,
transplants
nice.
from India to Fiji, so they're Fijian Indians. And my family moved from India to America in the early 90s. So I was 10 years old when we moved here.
Wow.
And then within the US, both my husband's family and my family, we moved around a lot, just looking for work and trying to establish ourselves. So we've been to a lot of different places growing up. So moving to Florida it was new, something we're not used to, but it's certainly not a place that we're stopping for a minute and moving back. We're hoping to stay here for the long haul or wherever life takes us.
The way I see it, because I've been here for years, and when I moved to Florida, I'm like, I don't think I'm gonna move again, because I moved a lot since I came to the States like 25 years ago. But for
Mhm.
me, when I came to Florida, it was my last destination. And my
Mhm.
rationale is like, well, I would go there to retire anyhow. So I'm not just pre-retirement by a few years, maybe a couple of decades, I hope. And that would be the final destination for retirees. So it's like I'm ahead of the game in a sense. But yeah, Florida is definitely home. And just before we started recording, you were saying how you are cottage food operators, and you were mentioning that you're doing farmers market. How does it feel to even do farmers markets in January in Florida?
Yeah. So yesterday it was cold, believe it or not. So we were standing there, all of the vendors. We were like, "Oh my gosh, this is so cold." Everyone's shivering in their tent.
Yeah.
So it was exciting. It was something that I'd never done before because I'd never been to a farmers market to even visit as a
Oh,
as a
wow.
consumer in
Yeah.
January. So no less now being there as a vendor. Definitely exciting. The crowd was actually amazing. It was a bigger crowd than 2 weeks ago when we were there, just as the new
Nice.
year turned. So it was fun. It was a lot of fun. And you learn more and more every time you go. And so there's been a new update or some improvement that I've made just from learning from the previous farmers market. And all of that has just been very positive. And every time I go, it's always a new level of excitement going in.
Absolutely. So, cottage food operation, telling me a little bit why you got into this specific niche.
Well, it's because I had an idea which started from wanting to make something for my husband and also maybe for my kids, but that was sort of a hopeful thing to make something for them to eat. First, it was about my husband, and he just needed something to eat in between meetings,
Yeah.
and so I had always been interested in food for a while. For it's been, I want to say, 5+ years that I've been interested in food. Um, had you asked me as a kid if I liked being in the kitchen, it was a hard pass. It was a no, flat no.
Yeah.
And even my mom would tell you that there's no way that I'm going to spend a lot of time in the kitchen growing up. I didn't like eating. I didn't like cooking. There was not an aspect of being in the kitchen at all that I liked. And then all of a sudden, I don't know how and where, I just got into food, and the more and more time I spent in the kitchen, the more I wanted to be in the kitchen. And I enjoyed that time even more every time. So I started to, bring back or dive into my culture a little bit, thinking about the different types of food that I grew up eating in my Indian culture. And so drawing from that and then wanting to create something that was a quick and easy snack for my husband in between meetings, I started to make something, and it turned into, he took it to work. His coworkers liked it. His coworkers said, "This is really good. Wow, what's in here?" And
Yeah.
I told them what's in there, and they're like, "Really? I would have never imagined that combination of food would actually taste good." And then inevitably, when you're in the kitchen, your kids always pop in. And
Yeah.
so my 8-year-old and 3-year-old wold pop into the kitchen and go, "Oh, mom, what are you making?" And they saw what I was doing, and they thought it looked like cookies, and so they wanted to try it naturally. And my 3-year-old has been obsessed with it. So then I took it to the playground to have her friends try it, and many of her little friends liked it too. And so I go, all of a sudden, well, maybe I have something here. And my husband's coworkers were like, you know what, you should go to the farmer's market and check it out and see what happens. And so there was a small fair in my community that I live in, and I got a lot of positive feedback from there. And they said there was a family practice physician group table, and they tried it, and they said, you really will do well at the farmer's market. Why don't you try it? And I go, I've never been there. I don't know what it's like. I don't even know what I need to have.
Yeah.
Like, do I need a tent, a table, signs? My mind was going a little crazy, feeling overwhelmed. But fast forward a little bit, and figured out a couple of things, and I'm happy to say that that was a great decision that I made in getting out there a little bit more. And for sure, it was nerve-wracking. Let me tell you that it was definitely nerve-wracking. I'm not an extroverted person. I'm an introvert at heart. I don't like being in big crowds, and so being there with a lot of people is in itself a big thing for me to do. And then talking to people, I think talking to people has always put me at ease, because I'm talking about a product that I create, so that comes easily. But anyway, so that's really how I got there, and 3 markets in, and it's been a great journey.
Yeah, and congratulations. I looked at your website, Maureen Energy Bars. I really love it. You have some really nice product. I'm interested in something you mentioned when you said, I don't know when, I don't know how I got into it, and I'm always interested in seeing why people do what they do and tap into their, kind of the behind the scene of their the heads, to figure out when was that moment. And I see sometimes food operators, whether restaurants or bakeries or cottage CFOs, they have had an influence somehow, as food is a memory. You have some moments where you built beautiful and joyful instances with food that influenced you. So let's look into the how and the when you realize that you have that little thing for food. When was that? Can you remember what could have been your food memory that really connected you to food, that influenced you to even start in this journey?
Are you psychic?
Kind of a little bit, yeah.
Have you been spying on us?
Yeah, I have been.
Because a lot of what you said is kind of like how it happened, and there were a couple of memories that I don't have a great memory, to be honest. My daughter, my husband, everybody makes fun of me about why I can't remember a lot of things, but I tap into my memory of what I do have left in my brain, and there are some distinct, vivid memories of just being in the kitchen, whether it's helping my mom with something that I definitely didn't want to do, but I had to do it. And then growing up, and there are certain foods that become your favorites from what your parents are cooking for you.
Yeah.
And then you naturally want to learn how to make them. And I still don't know how to make a lot of my favorite foods that my mom makes. I'm still trying to figure that out. But being in the kitchen, I have memories of certain foods that we would eat. And then those memories turned into questions that I had for my mom and my grandmother about, well, why did we start eating these kinds of food? And so they would take me back to stories in India and how and why we would eat certain foods and what the benefits were, or what they thought the benefits were back then. And at that time, no one had the internet, so no one really knew how to have proof, right, about the benefits of what they were eating. They just had a gut instinct. And those were the stories that they would tell me, and then they kind of stuck. And so as I grew up and I had kids, maybe it was getting into a little bit about, who my mom was to me and my sister and my brother. And some of that came with me as I grew up and became a mother. And I started cooking because, well, I want to make sure my kids are eating good, healthy food. And, it's not to say that I can't buy healthy food. It's just that when I made a couple of things in the kitchen and then my daughter started eating it, it made me feel really good that I made something that they liked and I knew it was good for them. And so all of a sudden, I think I flashed back to memories of me being little with my mom. And then that kind of turned into a legacy that I wanted to create secretly, maybe, I don't know. And And that's really all it was. And so I started making certain things. They liked it. My husband said, maybe you should create a little recipe book for them to have. And I have always wanted to have that of my mom. You know, me and my sister, we always say, Mom, can you create a recipe book of, you know, all the things that you make, so we have it, and then we'll make it for our kids. And so my husband and I, we were just talking, and he loves eating certain foods that I make, my kids as well. And so the reason why I got into food was because of them. You know, they're the inspiration, and a lot of that inspiration came from my family and growing up. So maybe
Those memories that you are
carrying
rebuilding.
forward the memories. Yeah, exactly. That's why I said, are you psychic, or have you been following us? Because a lot of food emotionally is about those memories.
So those of us, and I say those of us because I'm part of this community of people who come from a different culture and different ethnicities and ethnic background. We have this riches, you know, like this wealth in the food we eat. And unfortunately, because of the process of moving from one country to another, I am the one who came, but I see my daughters, for instance, they haven't kept much of our heritage in terms of food because they eat other things. But deep down, we know that some of it is getting lost. I interviewed actually someone who grew up in Mexico recently, and he got really emotional thinking that there are some meals or some, you know, things that his mom used to make that he will never eat again because she passed away of cancer a few years ago. And that is such a loss that we have to figure out a way how to preserve or salvage in a way, because it rests on our shoulders to try to take those recipes, as you say, from your mom or your grandmother. And I'm in kind of the same situation. Grandma is 97 years old and she has this bread that she makes with herbs.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm dying to go back home just to film everything because, like, oh my God, she's getting sick and old by the minute and she won't be around for a long time. And I would feel devastated not to capture that. So do you feel this emotion to preserving some of your heritage, especially when it comes from food? We're talking about food right now, but I'm sure there are other aspects of our heritage that we can preserve. Do you feel the obligation or the duty to preserve the heritage of food of your country or your culture? And what would you do, or would you simply focus on what's healthy, or tell me a little bit about how you approach this thing?
Yeah, absolutely. I do feel a deep desire to want to preserve cultural aspects of how I grew up and where I come from, and wanting to share more of the Indian heritage that I grew up knowing and learning about. I want to make sure that my two girls, you know that really well. And so as they grow up, they're able to hold on to it as much as possible. I mean, you know, it's a funny thing that you ask about, because my 8-year-old, she even says, Mommy, can we put up more decorations from India?
Oh,
And
wow.
so that really warms my heart, because
Wow.
you know, for her to say something like that, and for her to make so many attempts in the house to say words in Gujarati, which is our native language, it makes me feel so good, because I haven't made the effort to speak to her in Gujarati as much, and I probably should have as she was growing up. She may have been a better place right now in speaking the language, but nonetheless, we make an effort every day. It's really important for us to preserve our culture and make sure we carry forward those memories in our children, so that they can carry it forward. There is such a rich history, like you said, from, you know, North Africa,
Yeah.
where you come from, and from India, where I come from. There, you know, food is one aspect, but through food, I feel that there are stories that come out of those conversations. It's how I learned to cook. It's through stories and why we eat the
Yeah,
way we eat. And
absolutely.
that's what made me more interested in food. I'm obsessed with watching food documentaries and videos on Netflix and anywhere else. I could sit there on hours watching it. And the reason why I
Same.
get so caught up in it is because of the stories. It's not about, yes, it's about food, and I do love food and great tasting food. But it's the stories that I get so enchanted by, and I just want to sit there and listen and talk to people who have all those stories about recipes that have been passed down. So for me, it's not just about cooking healthy. So the more energy bars that I make are healthy cookies, and there's a lot of energy in them. There's a lot of protein in them, a lot of fiber, a lot of folates and vitamin B. But it's not just about making healthy cookies or healthy energy bars. It's about preserving the culture and bringing some aspect of that into any venture that I go into when it comes to food.
What is it made out of? I'm
It's
actually
made out of
looking
chickpeas and black lentils.
Okay.
Yeah, and chickpeas and black lentils are usually in a lot of savory and spicy stews and dishes. So there's a big surprise sometimes at the farmers market with some people who are familiar with it. They go, I've seen it in soups and stews, and I eat it, but I never thought that it could be in something that was sweet.
Tell me about the name, Maureen Energy Bars.
So it was quite simple. More energy bars is based on the fact that the cookies have a lot of energy in them.
See, I am reading it, Maureen.
Oh, yeah.
I thought it was Maureen, not more energy bars. So that's kind of interesting. I thought it was a name, Maureen. I'm like, okay, who is Maureen?
Oh, how funny.
Yeah, so it's more energy bars.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So I am always interested in, of course, food as a memory and what influenced them to become food influencer or food operators. But I'm also interested in the signature dish, like for food operators. What is your signature dish? If you were to share your favorite of anything, what would that be? And by the way, I'm very versed in Indian cuisine, so I eat it a lot. And there is actually a very good Indian restaurant down in Sanford. And I do attend a lot of Pakistani events, which I'm guessing it's kind of similar food, a little different, but similar. So I know a bit or two about Indian food. So you can tell me if it's an Indian food or it's not an Indian food.
Oh, sure. So before, I mean, even now, as I cook for my kids, I make a lot of spicy dishes. So a lot of flavorful spicy dishes, and some of them are actually native to the state that I come from, which is Gujarat in India. And not the food that where we grew up is a lot different than a lot of the North Indian food menus that you see at North Indian restaurants, like chicken tikka masala and butter chicken. Those kinds of dishes are familiar to North India. So where I come from is more central West India, just 5 hours north of Bombay. So there are curries that are native to that area that I make that I feel are really good. They're made out of yogurt and sour cream and ginger, turmeric, cumin, curry leaves. A lot of things go into it. It's a I want to say it's like a really good.
Making me hungry, girl.
soup.
I said you're making me hungry.
Yeah, I mean, you make it and then you cook it on the stove to heat it up and boil it, and the entire house just smells of all the spices, and there's no way you can avoid it. Like it smells so good and you just want to eat it.
Nice. Yeah. You are definitely making me hungry right now. So I want to ask you, if people want to find you, what's the best way to, where and what's the best way to find you and find out more about your product? Because part of why I do what I do is really to help people kind of, be heard and promote as much as I can to support, especially startups and young entrepreneurs like yourself. So where can people find you?
So you can find me at moreenergybars.com.
Not Maureen, more energy.
More energy, yeah. MORE energybars.com. Or you can find me at the Parkland, Florida Farmers Market every other Sunday. So the next time I'll be there is February 5th. Whatever that Sunday is, February 6th, I think. And then every other Sunday after that, or definitely on the website, and definitely follow me on Instagram. I'm slowly growing the account and posting pictures of the journey on there.
Wonderful. I will definitely find you on Instagram. Before we go, what's your call to action? What would you advise people who want to start a cottage food operations? They have a passion for food and they want to make money. What's the next step? What would you recommend they do or don't do for that matter?
um, I think that if there's something that you really feel deep down you want to share, that you feel passionate about, don't be afraid to want to express that and want to share that.
Mhm.
Don't feel that you're not going to be accepted. What will people think? The beauty about being out there is learning about what people think, and you'll find out very quickly if there is a market for you or for the product that you're trying to create and share with others. Even if the market is not as big as you thought it was going to be immediately, be patient, be kind to yourself, have grace for yourself, don't rush anything. I think that's what a lot of people go into it, thinking that you're going to have to do so much work. So be patient, give yourself space. But if there's something deep down that you feel like you want to share and you feel good about it, that it's going to do something good, for whatever audience you're trying to reach, don't be afraid to put it out there. Go for it.
Absolutely. Amen to that. You have to try. Well, thank you so much, Jalpa. Thank you for your time. Appreciate having you here. This is, guys, the end of our time today as we continue to inspire, empower, and connect citizens of the world to create success and build financial freedom. And this was Around Our Table with Shaba Shams, and I will see you on the next one. Thank you so much to my guest. I hope I will see you on another episode and I'll see you around. Thanks a lot.
Absolutely.